Hey guys, do you know what's behind me? That is Waterloo. The Battle of Waterloo where Napoleon lost is in this exact site. So let's go check it out. The Battle of Waterloo was fought on Sunday, June 18, 1815, near Waterloo, at the time in the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, now in Belgium. It was fought between the French army under the command of Napoleon and the two armies of the Seventh Coalition. One of these was a British-led coalition consisting of units from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Hanover, Brunswick, and Nassau, under the command of the Duke of Wellington. The other was composed of the three corps of the Prussian army under the command of the Field Marshal von Blücher. The decisive battle of its age, it concluded a war that had raged for 23 years, ended French attempts to dominate Europe, and destroyed Napoleon's imperial power forever. This is a famous battle, and going through many details will take a lot of time. So I'm just gonna focus on the main points and a summary version of the battles. The French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte had escaped from exile in March 1815 and returned to power. He decided to go on the offensive, hoping to win a quick victory that would tear apart the coalition of Europe armies formed against him. Two armies, the Prussians, led by Field Marshal Gerhard von Blücher, and Anglo-Allied force under Field Marshal the Duke of Wellington, were gathering in the Netherlands. Together, they outnumbered the French. Napoleon's best chance of success was therefore to keep them apart and defeat each separately. Attempting to drive a wedge between his enemies, Napoleon crossed the River Sambre on the 15th of June, entering what is now Belgium. The next day, the main part of his army defeated the Prussians at Ligny and drove them into retreat, with losses over 20,000 men, while French casualties were only half that number. That same day, Wellington beat off a separate French attack on the crossroads of Quatre Bras, but the Prussians' defeat at Ligny meant also he had to retreat or risk being outflanked and overwhelmed. The Prussian defeat might have been more decisive had not poor staff work led an entire French corps to march back and forth between Ligny and Quatre Bras without attacking either force. Pursued by Napoleon's main force, Wellington fell back towards the village of Waterloo. Unknown to the French, the Prussians, although defeated, were still in good shape. They retreated northwards toward Wellington's position and were able to keep in contact with him. The 48,000 strong Prussian army was experienced and professional, a mix of veteran, militia, and reserve units. Its strength lay in the officer corps, especially its general staff, who managed to reorganize the army and move it to Waterloo within 48 hours of its defeat at Ligny. Confident by their promise of reinforcements, Wellington decided to stand and fight on June 18th until the Prussians could arrive. The French army had their greatest military commander in Napoleon Bonaparte. The emperor was loved by his loyal troops, demonized by his enemies, feared and respected by all. His army was composed of veterans who had rallied to his cause on his return from exile. Having detached 33,000 men to follow the Prussians after Ligny, Napoleon had 72,000 men and 246 guns at Waterloo. Wellington also accepted that Napoleon's presence on the battlefield made a huge difference to the morale and performance of his troops. The Anglo-Allied army had 68,000 men and 156 guns. The men were a mix of inexperienced troops and veterans of the Peninsular War. With such a mixed force, there was no question of Wellington going on the offensive. Wellington drew up his army along a ridge of Mount St. Jean, Using tactics that he had perfected during the Peninsular War, he positioned most of his forces behind the ridge, so they were out of sight of the enemy and sheltered from artillery fire. The rest of his army guarded 3 outposts in front of the ridge. To the west stood the Chateau de Hogmont, which Wellington garrisoned with British guardsmen and German light infantry. In the center was the farm of La Haye Sainte, defended by more Germans and British riflemen. At the east end of the ridge lay the hamlet of Papelet, occupied by German Duchy of Nassau troops. Napoleon's plan was simple. He would conduct a diversionary attack against Hogmont. Then once Wellington had sent reinforcements there, a main attack against the bulk of the Anglo-Allied army would begin. At 11:30 a.m., following a huge artillery bombardment, partly negated by Wellington's position and the wet ground, Napoleon launched his attack against Hogmont. The French cleared the wood in front of the chateau, but were shot down as they left its shelter. A small group did manage to break via the north gate, which had been left open to facilitate resupply. But the defenders managed to shut the gates and kill them. The chateau remained in British hands all day. 2 hours later, the French attacked the Allied left center. They drove back the Dutch Belgians. As they crested the ridge, they were stopped by British infantry and then counter-attacked by British heavy cavalry. The cavalry routed the French infantry, but carried their charge too far. They were then counter-attacked by French cavalry and cut to pieces. By mid-afternoon, news of the Prussians' arrival forced Napoleon to form a defensive line on his right. Soon afterwards, believing the Allies were pulling back, the French cavalry charged the infantry of Wellington's right center, who formed a square. Although more cavalry were committed to attack, the soggy ground hampered the French. They could not make an impression on the British squares, which held firm despite suffering casualties from artillery fire. Meanwhile, the Prussians continued to arrive in Napoleon's right, forcing him to detach more troops to steady the situation. At about 6 p.m., the French captured La Haye Sainte, severely weakening Wellington's position. Under withering fire, Wellington's center began to collapse. The French commander, Marshal Ney, called for reinforcement to push home to his advantage. But Napoleon decided first to send troops to recapture the village of Plassenoy from the Prussians. This gave Wellington time to strengthen his position. At about 7 p.m., in a last bid for victory, Napoleon released his finest troops, the Imperial Guard. They marched up the ridge between Hogmont and La Haye Sainte, but had chosen to attack where Wellington was strongest. Under a withering fire from British guardsmen and light infantry, the Imperial Guard halted, wavered, and finally broke. Their defeat sent the rest of the French into panic and eventually retreat. This continued all night, with the French harried by the Prussian cavalry. Napoleon lost nearly 40,000 men, killed, wounded, or captured. The Allies suffered 22,000 casualties. Napoleon was finally defeated. He spoke of fighting on, but was forced to abdicate when the Allies entered Paris on July 7th. He spent the rest of his life in exile on the island of St. Helena in South Atlantic. The impact was the Duke of Wellington received a hero's welcome on his return to Britain. He was showered with further honors, eventually becoming a prime minister in 1828 and again in 1834. Waterloo ended the wars that had convulsed Europe since the French Revolution of 1789 to 99. It also ended France's attempts, whether under Louis XIV or Napoleon, to dominate the continent. Waterloo inaugurated a general European peace that, apart from the brief interruption of the Crimean War, lasted until 1914. In the years that followed 1815, France and Britain were brought closer together, fighting as partners in the Crimea and remaining allies through the two world wars. Battlefield tours of Waterloo started immediately after the campaign and continue to this day. That's why we're here! We're gonna visit a couple of historic sites around the area. First is the Memorial Museum. So now we're heading to the main museum or entrance to the memorial. It's like 18 euro per person. Here, one can experience the Battle of Waterloo with an exciting, extensive collection of information and exhibits about the battle. The museum offers visitors a narrative, multi-sensory layout including various special effects and immersive scenery. One can explore the history of the famous battle through uniforms, historical items, animated maps, a pioneering 3D film, a paper chase game, and multimedia animations. I accidentally lost my ticket. Fortunately, the lady was nice enough to give me a new one. The second is the Panorama of the Battle of Waterloo. It houses a monumental panoramic painting depicting the battle. The neoclassical building is located immediately to the north of the Lion's Mound. and the rotunda was designed by the architect Franz van Ophem. It houses an oil canvas painting completed by the French artist Louis Dumoulin in 1912. With 14 canvas panels sewn together to create a cylinder. It depicts several different episodes from the Battle of Waterloo of 1815, concentrating on charges by French cavalry. There are physical elements in front of the painting, including cut-out figures, fences, and bodies made of plaster and paper mache, disguise the lower edge of the painting and enhance its immersive quality. The building and the painting were protected as a historical monument in 1998. In 2008, the Belgian government proposed that the Panorama should be included within the UNESCO World Heritage Site listing. So this is like the old panorama Battle of Waterloo. It is one of the few original panoramas that have survived and which are still exhibited in their original location. The third is the Lion's Mound, a large conical artificial hill in the Battle of Waterloo. King William I of the Netherlands ordered its construction in 1820 and was completed in 1826. It commemorates the location where a musket ball hit the shoulder of William II of the Netherlands, the Prince of Orange at the time, and knocked him from his horse during the battle. We climbed the steps up to the Lion's Mound. It is also a memorial of the Battle of Quatre Bras, which had been fought 2 days earlier on June 16. The hills offer a vista of the battlefield. At the behest of William I, the royal architect Charles van der Straten designed the monument. The engineer Jean-Baptiste Vitquin conceived it as a symbol of the Allied victory rather than glorifying a sole individual. The mount is 141 feet in height. A statue of a lion standing upon a stone-black pedestal surmounts the hill. Jean-Louis Van Gil sculpted the model lion, which closely resembles the 16th century Medici lions. The lion is represented on the crests of both of the Royal Arms of England and the Royal Coat of Arms of the United Kingdom, as well as the personal coat of arms of the monarch of the Netherlands, and symbolizes courage. In its right front paw, a spear, signifying global victory. I finally reached the top of the lion, or the mound. It's kind of nice being on top of the mound. The air is cool and it's kind of peaceful. Lastly, there is the camp. where people do reenactment of the Battle of Waterloo. Hey guys, I hope you enjoy our visit to the Battle of Waterloo site. And if you like, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye. So guys, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and feel free to comment.
Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell. Come on guys, hit the bell.
For notifications.
And don't forget to share.
And like.